Jerusalem won without a battle. Frederick II's surprising crusading maneuver. The secret of the Sixth Crusade. Crossed swords, no sword gone, no blood shed, but Jerusalem returned. In 1228, an emperor took such a step, which shocked the whole world. Frederick II fought no war. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Nazareth became the property of Christians, and that too from a Muslim sultan. In this video you will see fire. How did an excommunicated king win the Crusades? Fire. Was it victory or betrayal? Fire. Conspiracies, agreements, and the letter that changed history. Fire. The displeasure of the Pope, the silence of Muslims, and the changing map of the Middle East. Film projector, a story you never read in books. Speech balloon. Do you think it was a triumph of peace or a deception of the cross? Leave your feedback in the comments. Pushpin. Subscribe our channel and know the moments in history, not wars, cleverly won. The Sixth Crusade, 1228 to 1229, also known as Frederick II's Crusade, was a military crusade to recapture Jerusalem and the rest of the Holy Land. It began 7 years after the failure of the Fifth Crusade. As a result of diplomatic maneuvers by the Holy Roman Emperor and Frederick II, King of Sicily, the Kingdom of Jerusalem gained some control over parts of the Holy Land, including Jerusalem, for the next 15 years. Background: the Fifth Crusade ended in defeat in 1221. Frederick II and the Holy Roman Emperor, despite having sworn to the campaign, did not join. The troops he sent to Egypt arrived too late. They would have to wait several more years for Frederick's actions. Now in 1216, Pope Innocent III died, so his successor, Honorius III, reminded Frederick that Christendom awaited his action. While in Syria and Egypt, the Ayyubids were engaged in civil war among themselves. Sultan Al-Kamil was fighting against many of his brothers and other relatives. Timeline: the initial phase of the crusade was a complex endeavor involving numerous deployments, negotiations with the Ayyubids, Frederick's departure delayed by illness, subsequent expulsions, and finally the emperor's arrival at Acre. Here are the important points in the timeline. August 1227, the first wave departs from Brindisi, arriving in Syria in October. 1226 to 1227, Frederick's negotiations with Al-Kamil, September 1227. A second wave, including Frederick, departs and returns November 1227. Frederick is deposed by Gregory IV. June 1228, Frederick finally sets sail. After a 5-week stay in Cyprus, in September 1228, Frederick arrived at Acre. After 1221, the Ayyubid Empire. The defeat of the Crusaders in the Fifth Crusade was the joint effort of the brothers Al-Kamil, Al-Mazam, and Al-Ashraf of the Ayyubid Empire. After 1221, Al-Mu'azzam returned to Damascus, suspicious of his brothers and their motives. In June 1222, he launched a campaign against Gai Umbriaco to enforce a truce and unsuccessfully attacked his cousin al-Nasir al-Khalij Arslan, the emir of Hama, and later captured Marat al-Numan and Salamiyah. Al-Mu'izz was forced to call off the siege of Hama and surrender his other conquests by order of Al-Kamil. He then formed an alliance against his brother Al-Ashraf, possibly at the request of Sultan al-Nasir, with Saladin's former general Gakbaro. Deployed another of his brothers, Al-Muzaffar Ghazi, to Mayfarkan and Aklat, who rebelled against him and lost Aklat to Al-Ashraf. Now Ghazi also joined Al-Mu'azzam's rebellion, which was quickly suppressed by Al-Ashraf and Aleppo's forces. Al-Mu'azzam now invited disgruntled members of the Sultan's Egyptian forces to challenge the Sultan to come to Syria if he dared. While against Al-Ashraf, he also enlisted the help of the Khwarezmids under Shah Jalaluddin Mang Barni to attack Diyarbakir. Beginning of the Crusades by 1226, it was clear that the Sixth Crusade would indeed begin with an invasion of Syria and Palestine with the goal of conquering Jerusalem. Frederick II was to lead the crusade. After the death of Honorius III in 1227, the new Pope Gregory IV entered the scene, determined to move forward and with a long-standing dislike for Frederick. The failure of the Fifth Crusade was a devastating blow to Christianity. Of all the European monarchs, only Frederick II, Holy Roman Emperor, was in a position to recapture Jerusalem. On July 15, 1215, when he was formally crowned as King of Germany and Aachen, he took the cross for the Holy Crusade and asked the nobles present to do the same. But circumstances prevented him from joining the war. When the emperor was recrowned in Rome by the Pope on November 22, 1220, persuaded by the Pope and his representatives, Frederick vowed to go on crusade once again and also signed a treaty with Thomas of Celano, who arranged for his departure. Now June 24, 1225 was fixed as a new date for the crusade. At the same time, Frederick, who had been in exile since June 1222, planned a strategic marriage. John of Brienne, king of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, was looking for a suitable husband for his daughter Isabella, who was only 9 years old at the time. He traveled to Italy, accompanied by the patron Raoul of Marine Court and the hospitaller master Guerin de Montego. In Apulia, he met Frederick II and married Isabella II to the emperor. The Pope gave his blessing, and it was John's condition that he would be his daughter's regent or co-ruler until 1226. Now once again, Crusaders were sent across Europe to call and recruit for a new crusade. Despite developing transport ships, conditions were not favorable to meet the target date. Hermann of Salza and Raoul of Marine Court were sent to the Pope to inform him of the situation. The Pope also urged Louis VIII of France to join Frederick and settle his dispute with Raymond V of Toulouse. None of these efforts were fruitful and all believed that the agreed timetable was unattainable. The Pope also agreed to this delay on July 18, 1225. Treaty of San Germano. On July 25, 1225, the Treaty of San Germano was signed between Frederick II and Henry III. A Dominican named Gavala Duran II was in charge of the negotiations. Frederick promised to leave for the crusade by August 15, 1227, and stay for 2 years. During this period, he was to maintain 1,000 knights in Syria, provide transport for additional forces, and supply Rome with 100,000 ounces of gold in the care of Hermann of Salza, John of Brienne, and the patron. These sums were to be returned after the emperor's arrival at Acre. If, for any reason including his death, he did not arrive, the money was to be spent on the needs of the Holy Land. He also promised to lead a crusade. After the treaty was signed, Galla became Bishop of Brescia. The situation in Italy. After making a treaty with the honorees, Frederick held a royal banquet in Cremona, Lombardy's main royalist city, with the main purpose of organizing, supporting, and consolidating the crusade. King of Jerusalem. Frederick II wished to visit the Holy Land as King of Jerusalem. Relations with John soured after his marriage to Brian's daughter Isabella, due to Frederick's claim to the kingship of Jerusalem. John was allegedly assured that he would be king of Jerusalem for the rest of his life. According to another tradition, John fell out with his new son-in-law because Frederick had seduced one of Isabella's nieces who was his lady-in-waiting. In another version of the chronicle, John often punished his son-in-law, with the result that John wanted Brian's nephew Walter IV to seize Sicily. Frederick declared that John had lost his claim to the kingdom when Isabella married him. He proclaimed himself King of Jerusalem for the first time in December 1225 in a special ceremony in Foggia. John of Brienne now set out for Rome, where Honorius sympathized with him and ignored Frederick's claims. Balin of Sidon, Simon of Mogastel, the Archbishop of Tyre, and other Jerusalem lords who had taken Isabella in marriage to Frederick at Brindisi recognized Frederick as their rightful king. Frederick's first royal decree was to grant new privileges to Hermann of Solza and the Teutonic Knights, giving them equal status with the Templars and Hospitallers. Financing the Crusades. In November 1222, John of Brienne, the first king of Jerusalem to visit Europe, arrived in Brindisi with several objectives. The treasury of the empire was depleted and additional funds were badly needed. The unanimous decree ad liberandum published at the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 created a system of public financing of the Crusades. The gold seized after San Germano was quickly spent due to the delay in the crusade, and Frederick, as king of Jerusalem, imposed a levy on Sicily in 1228. He also received financial support from Cyprus. Ayyubid. After 1225 and 1226, Al-Mu'azzam again advanced towards Homs, while Gokburo attacked Mosul and Al-Jazira. Al-Ashraf stopped his brother in Homs and sent the Seljuk Sultan of Rome, Kikbadai, to stop the invasion of Gokburo. In the end, both Al-Ashraf and Badr al-Din Lulu, the ruler of Mosul, succumbed to Al-Mu'azzam. Now, Al-Kamil began to seek peace with the West and sent Mir Fakhr al-Din ibn al-Sheikh to meet Frederick II. By May 1227, Al-Kamil was concerned for his kingdom as the Crusaders began to arrive. He was reconsidering his offer of Jerusalem to Frederick II in 1226, which seemed to him the only viable option. Meanwhile, Al-Mu'azzam died on November 12, 1227, and was succeeded by his son Nasir Dawud, with the approval of Al-Kamil. This peace did not last long among the Ayyubids. Dawud refused his uncle's request to give up Croc de Montreal. Then, another brother, Al-Aziz Usman of Banias, attacked Bahram Shah, the emir of Baalbek. On this rebellion of Dawud and Al-Aziz, Al-Kamil finally captured Jerusalem and Nablus in July 1228. Now Al-Ashraf was summoned to Damascus, who met Al-Kamil in Tal al-Ajil. There it was decided that Al-Ashraf would receive Damascus, Al-Jazira would remain under David. while Al-Kamil would remain in Jerusalem to negotiate with Frederick II. German and Sicilian participation in 1224. A plan to invade Egypt required suitable ships to enter the Nile Delta. Now, all the emphasis was on Jerusalem. Oliver of Paderborn, a soldier from Germany and finance from Sicily, was in charge, but he was not so successful. He was replaced now by Bishop Conrad of Hildesheim. Landgrave Louis of Thuringia took the cross in 1226 and, along with Walrand of Limburg, encouraged hundreds of Thuringian and Austrian knights to join him. He also received significant support from Cologne, Lübeck, and Worms. Many prelates and minstrels, including the poet Frederick, also joined. The numbers and ability of the German crusaders gave campaign planners some hope. Participation of the British. Henry III of England took the cross at his coronation in May 1220 and planned the Crusades. In 1223, Henry III appealed to Henry for help in the Holy Land. But, like his father John Lakeland, he prioritized dealing with crises at home first. Nevertheless, English participation in the Sixth Crusade was significant. Negotiations between the emperor and the sultan. As mentioned earlier, Sultan Al-Kamil was the victim of a desperate civil war in 1226. After unsuccessfully trying to negotiate with the West beginning in 1219, he tried this method again. The Sultan sent Emir Fakhr al-Din ibn al-Sheikh to Frederick and asked him to come to Acre for negotiations and offered to return most of the Holy Land to the Christians in exchange for military assistance against his brother Al-Muazzam in Damascus. Fakhr al-Din, surprised by Frederick's Arabic speaking, praised Muslim society and insulted Rome. Frederick responded by sending his trusted advisor Thomas of Aquinabar, Ards de Castacca, and Archbishop of Palermo to meet with Al-Kamil. But finally, nothing was achieved except the exchange of gifts. The Crusaders leave. The Crusaders' departure from the port of Brindisi was scheduled for midsummer of 1227. But the conditions and the intense heat led to discontent and sickness among the assembled troops. Many returned home, some died, and the first surviving Crusaders left in August 1227 and arrived in Syria in early October. They included the Germans under the command of Thomas Aquinas and Henry of Limburg, and the French and English under the command of Bishop Peter de Roches and William Brewer. On reaching Acre, they joined forces with the empire and fortified the coastal towns of Caesarea and Jaffa. He drove the Muslims of Damascus out of Saida and fortified the island of Khalid al-Bar. The Germans rebuilt Montfort Castle northeast of Acre for the Teutonic Knights. The emperor and his troops had to face delays. They set out on September 8, 1227, but before reaching their first stop at Otranto, many, including Frederick, succumbed to the plague. Louis of Thuringia died, while Frederick disembarked to seek medical attention. Determined to keep his oath, he sent a fleet of 20 galleys to Acre. These included Hermann of Salza, Gerold of Lausanne, Odo of Montbéliard, and Balin of Sidon. The crusade was now under the command of Henry IV, Duke of Limburg. In February or March 1228, Al-Aziz Uthman of Banias ambushed a group of Crusaders near Tyre, killing or capturing 70 horsemen. Expulsion of Frederick II sent ambassadors to inform Gregory IV of the situation, but the Pope refused to meet with him, and Frederick II was deposed as Holy Roman Emperor on September 29, 1227. The Pope did not know or care about Frederick's illness simply because he had not fulfilled his agreement. He was accused of violating his holy oath and being responsible for the deaths of the Crusaders at Brindisi. He was accused of feigning illness and resting in Potswali instead of going to the Holy Land. Frederick's response was more realistic and included a plea to take up the cross once more. In November 1227, the Sultan's ambassador, Fakhr al-Din ibn al-Sheikh, was again sent to meet the emperor. These negotiations were conducted in secret, causing concern among the German Crusaders. Even the amiable poet Frederick expressed his sorrow over this. Shortly after Fakhr al-Din's departure, Thomas, the emperor's negotiator, sent word that al-Mu'azzam had died suddenly on November 12, 1227. This revelation shifted the balance of power, and Frederick dispatched Richard Flandry to the king of Syria to advance negotiations. The Sixth Crusade. Frederick made his last attempt to reconcile with Gregory, sending Albert I of Kaffrenberg, Archbishop of Magdeburg, and 2 Sicilian judges to confer with the Pope. This had no effect, and Frederick departed Brindisi on June 28, 1228. On June 29, 1228, it stopped at Otranto, from where it crossed the Adriatic Sea to the island of Othanoi on June 30th. Finally crossing Cyprus to Limassol on July 21st. In the Kingdom of Jerusalem, Frederick II arrived in Acre on September 7, 1228, and was warmly received by the Templars, Hospitallers, and clergy, but refused the kiss of peace because of his excommunication. He bowed to the pressure and sent Henry of Malta and Archbishop Marino Flangeri to the Pope to announce his arrival in Syria and to ask for forgiveness. But Gregory's mind could not be changed. When news of Frederick's excommunication spread, public support for him waned considerably. The position of the Hospitallers and Templars was more complicated. They refused to join the emperor's army directly, but supported the crusade when Frederick agreed to remove his name from official orders. But Frederick's army was outnumbered. The Jaffa Treaty, having resolved the internecine conflicts in Syria, Al-Kamil's position was stronger than it had been a year earlier, when he had made his original offer to Frederick. He probably did not know that Frederick's force was a mere shadow of the army that had originally been assembled when the crusade was called. Frederick felt that his only hope of success in the Holy Land was to negotiate for the return of Jerusalem, as he lacked the manpower to participate in the war. He sent Thomas of Aquinas and Balian of Sidon to inform the Sultan of his arrival in the Holy Land. Al-Kamil was friendly but non-committal. In response, Frederick received the Sultan's ambassadors, including Fakhr al-Din ibn al-Sheikh, at the Hospitallers' camp. The Sultan moved from Nablus to Arabia, northeast of Gaza, and Thomas and Balian were sent to resume negotiations. Meanwhile, in January 1229, Frederick was informed that some rebels were flourishing in his kingdom, threatening his kingdom. This put Frederick in an awkward position. If he stayed too long in the Holy Land, he might lose his kingdom. It would be dishonorable if he left without a result. He instructed Henry of Malta to send 20 galleys to Syria by the following Easter. Fortunately for Frederick, Damascus was besieged by his own nephew Nasir Dawood, along with Al-Kamil, after which he agreed to cede Jerusalem to the Franks and also agreed to give a narrow passage to the coast. The treaty was signed on February 18, 1229, and included a 10-year truce. English bishops Peter de Roches and William Brewer were witnesses to this signature. No complete copy of this treaty has survived, neither in Latin nor in Arabic. In it, Al-Kamil surrendered Jerusalem to the Christians, leaving some of the Muslim holy sites. Frederick conquered Bethlehem and Nazareth, part of the district of Sidon, and Jaffa and Turin on the coast. Muslims retained control over the Temple Mount area of Jerusalem, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Dome of the Rock. The forts of Transjordan remained in the hands of the Ayyubids. This agreement is also called the Gaza Agreement and the Al-Jaf Agreement. Kingdom of Jerusalem. After the Sixth Crusade, Frederick entered Jerusalem on March 17, 1229, and took formal control of the city from Al-Kamil's representative. He went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre the next day and placed the crown on his head. Hermann of Salza read the emperor's statement, blaming his excommunication not on the Pope, but on his advisors. Legally, he was actually regent for his son with Isabella of Jerusalem, Conrad II, who was born shortly before Frederick's departure in 1228. However, Frederick's interest in Jerusalem quickly waned, so he made a hasty retreat. As Frederick was on his way to the port, he was accosted by the unhappy people of Acre by throwing dung and entrails at him. The results of the Sixth Crusade were not universally acclaimed. 2 letters from Christians tell different stories. In his correspondence with Henry III of England, Frederick mentions the great success of this effort. In contrast, the letter written by Gerold, the patron of Lausanne, to all the faithful paints a deeper picture of the emperor and his exploits. On the Muslim side, Al-Kamil alone was pleased with the treaty, but Arabic sources described the treaty as one of the most disastrous events in Islam, blaming it solely on the Sultan. Muslim historians expressed equal hatred for the Sultan and the Holy Roman Emperor.